Good morning, everybody. The time is now 9 o'clock, and we are live, and I'd like to call this meeting, workshop to order. Please rise if you're able to for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have established a quorum. There are 8 directors here. On Monday, we had a resignation, so 8 is in total that we have, so we have a full complement here. Approval of the minutes of the workshop. There any additions, changes, or corrections to the minutes as amended? Yeah, Katie, we're getting an echo through there. Or anybody who's on there, please mute your microphone. Thank you. All right. Once again, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as amended? Hearing none, they'll stand as ordered. Once again, if you are listening via YouTube or whatever, please mute your microphone. We have the echo coming through. Thank you. Okay. Staff, we have no reports from the staff this month. That's a great holiday thing. I don't want to hear me. Jim, I don't want to hear me. Okay. New business. Katie, you're first up with the timeline for elections.
Those are the ones for our owner members who want to vote. As a reminder, you have to be an owner member, not an associate or a tenant, and you have to be in good standing to be able to vote in this election. So the deadline to register to vote would be March 11th, and that's only if you want to vote online via email. So if you don't want to do that, there's no actual registration. You just show up in the Data Resource Center on Election Day. But due to COVID and due to the convenience of the online voting, which we've had great success with in the last couple of years, we do encourage you to register. Registration is simply making sure the Member Services Office has your email address on file. So if you know that they have it on file, you're good to go. If you use the online portal for paying your dues or making golf tee times, then you are already have your email address on file. But if you're not sure, just go ahead and send us your email, your name, your rec card number to vote@suncitywest.com, and we can double check that for you or get you registered. And then if anyone cannot use the computer, cannot vote by email, and cannot physically make it down to the Data Resource Center to vote in person, then we do have the option for homebound voting, and we'll kind of handle each case differently depending on what your needs are. So you can call Karen Repkin and we can take care of that for you. The deadline for that is March 19th. And then we're going to have a candidates forum. Of course, on the 11th, we'll have more information coming out on that. Due to COVID, most of it's going to be virtual for most people, and we will have that broadcast out on our YouTube channel. And then we get into the actual online voting. So you'll have about 3 or 4 days there to vote online via email. And then we're going to close the online portion of it and reopen for the election day polling down in the Data Resource Center. So that's the schedule on that. Like I said, we'll have more information coming out in social media and in the Rec Center news. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Director, Tim Young. Candidates.
Concurrently, we have 4 candidates.
Thank you.
Yes, Sue?
Any consideration to not having in-person voting because of COVID?
We certainly don't want to disenfranchise anybody. There are some people that aren't comfortable using computers. And even though the in-person voting does utilize the computers, we have volunteers who will be helping individuals cast their votes. Of course, they'll be wearing masks, and we're definitely going to limit the number of people in the Data Resource Center. We'll have the hand gel and all of that, make it as safe as possible. We are hearing, though, that the vaccination program for those 75 and older, which is considered the 1B program, is going to begin Monday. So the general manager may be talking about that later, but if you are in that age category and you want to get the vaccine, go to the county website on Monday and start that vaccination process. So hopefully by March, we'll have a little better control over this virus here in the state.
Any other
So-
comments or questions? Oh,
I have one question. On the online voting, it said owners with more than one property will vote only once, and their vote will be weighted. Then under the voting in person, it said owner members may vote in person, or owners with more than one property will vote once for each property. Is that different?
If you have more than one property, he knows that. And in the background, if you cast an early vote based on your email address, he can weight that however many properties. So if you own 3 homes, your vote would count 3 times. However, if you physically walk into the Data Resource Center, we do verify your eligibility and mark you as voted, but it doesn't tie back to your account necessarily for them to know how many votes, for them to weight it in the background through the software. So we would simply give you 3 individual ballots and you would vote 3 times. So if you are somebody that owns multiple properties, it's much more convenient for you to vote early online.
Jim?
In round numbers, Katie, what does it cost us to run an election?
$5,500.
How much?
About $5,500 for the license, for the emails. So they'll send out emails to all the eligible voters. Then they send out reminder emails to the voters. So there is quite a bit. And then they have security. They have verified as being secure and all that stuff. So it is rather expensive, but it is no more expensive than when we ran it through the county and did paper ballots. So the printing cost of those ballots and having the county on hand was it's almost an equal cost.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Folks, once again, if you're online, we have an echo of everybody who's speaking here coming over the YouTube feed. Please mute your microphone on your computer or how your listening device that you're on. Please take this opportunity to do it. Okay, are there any other questions about the voting? It's quite all right. All right, moving along. Donna Maloney, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Charter Club Committee would like to present the new club membership participation per the requests from the governing board. Under Roman numeral number 7, maintaining a club charter. Chartered clubs must meet a membership participation rate of 75% as measured by monthly CR4's membership report. 1, membership participation is the action of taking part in club activities. Number 2, 75% of a club's membership must have participated in club activities at least once within annual membership period. Number 3, clubs are responsible for recording individual member participation. B, a club charter is dependent on club membership, membership participation, and longevity of existing club's charter.
Thank you, Donna. Donna, a couple of quick questions. This has gone through your committee and has been moved to us in the affirmative?
Yes, sir.
Okay, has staff has the staff of the recreation manager and his staff agreed to this also?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Directors, I'm open for comments on this. Hearing none, yes, Sharon?
I'm just curious on the clubs are responsible for recording individual member and for participation. Are you going to be tracking that somewhere? Is someone going to be checking with the clubs then to find out what their participation was?
Yes. Riley?
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Roberta?
Isn't that the new software that's being implemented?
For the future, yes.
Do we know how soon that is?
That would be a question for Katie.
Okay.
Oh,
Specific time.
Katie, hold on, we can't hear you. Yes.
We hope to have that software ready for deployment in a couple of months, and then we'll kind of go club by club. So hopefully this fiscal year, I just can't give you a more definitive time frame than that.
I would make the assumption that in all software, it's a rollout slowly. Any other comments or questions? Do I have consensus to move this for a vote to the governing board meeting in January?
Yes.
So go. Okay. Next one, Bill Schwinn, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We were tasked with a challenge to come up with some guidelines that would deal with the donations, memorializations, and naming guidelines for the association. And the subcommittee, I think, has come up and provided a pretty good, systematic, and consistent approach when considering donations, memorializations, and naming. A set of guidelines now exists for the naming of buildings, rooms, and other facilities and placements of memorials within its inventory of recreational amenities. The process now includes the beginning of routing things through Chartered Club Committee to get recommendations from that level that then get passed on to the Properties Committee. Recommendations then get forwarded to the General Manager as well as the Governing Board. We also provide now a 30-day member feedback regarding any kind of these naming facilities, and the Governing Board ultimately has final approval. When it comes to naming and renaming qualifications, there are now about 5 general provisions provided that are listed on page 2 of this document that depict some of the qualifications that we're looking at. We do strongly discourage renaming of facilities, but when things are named based on termination of particular advertising contracts, that is set forth in this guideline as well. As far as plaques, markers, and memorials, we kind of leave that to the individual chartered clubs located within the individual club rooms. As far as all other plaques and those types of memorials, we really want to steer them towards our memorial garden existing within Beardsley Park or any other designated rec center management memorial areas. So the donations, again, are consistent within this mission. Clubs may accept donations appropriate for their clubs, any donations requiring installation of any kind. There's a CR form process now in existence that gets staff involved to help with the installation on any of our facility walls or buildings. And then significant donations, which have been earmarked $10,000 or greater, go get reviewed by the appropriate committees off to the general manager and then the governing board for final approval. It's a pretty clean process. I think it accomplishes what we were after as far as that goes. And I think with Director Roberta Davidson's recommendation, there are some changes relative to our existing policies that a sentence needs to be added in there to kind of direct people to these particular guidelines that I think she'd like to see happen. These were discussed at a properties committee as well as these guidelines and were presented and approved, and a formal recommendation to move it to the governing board for approval has been met.
Thank you, Bill. Roberta, just a couple questions. Okay, your committee did approve this in total to recommend forward? Bill, staff is in concurrence with this?
subcommittee, it had Properties Committee members on it, as well as staff putting this together, so absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Roberta, go right ahead.
All right, first I'd like to thank Sue Fitzsimon and Donna Maloney for their assistance with that. I don't think we would have gotten this far if it weren't for those two. And after months and months of deliberation, but it did affect FAO2 and FA12. And since FA12 on the naming rights had a lot of process in it, and it makes more sense to put FAO2, all the information on donations, memorials, and naming rights, and then put the all-in-one policy and eliminate FA12. Also, the document on the guidelines will be kept at the general manager's office, since we don't have any place online to store it, that it would be available for anybody who needs it or wants it. So the recommendation from Properties was to revise FAO2 and eliminate FA12.
Thank you, Roberta. Comments and questions from the board? Yes, Sharon.
Two questions. One is, could you describe if the naming is of significant change to the community, what that regards to? It's the bottom paragraph on page 1. I just want to know I was curious what significant change meant. I mean, and who makes that decision about whether or not it's a significant change? And the other question is on page 3, when it says the life expectancy of these items shall be determined by the location, placement, et cetera, and then they'd be removed if there was a problem, will the person who donated for example, I know that a bench was donated in the name of the Lady Putters at one time, and I'm not sure where it went, I don't know where it is now, but if they wanted to replace it with another bench, would they be given that opportunity, or would it just be removed and they wouldn't know?
I'll answer the second one first, if you don't mind. Any kind of bench that has any kind of plaque or memorialization piece on it, the individual or family or who's ever related to that particular piece would be attempted to be notified. Without notification, I think the bench may go away or get replaced on an as-needed basis.
But I meant, would they have the opportunity to replace it themselves, is what I'm asking.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And significantly, Roberta, I don't know if you want to chime in there. We basically, when it came to donations, they earmarked a dollar value there and of $10,000 as far as being a significant change or a significant donation. It's a bit ambiguous, and that's what we were trying to capture with putting a dollar amount there. But I guess it would depend on what specifically anyone would be referring to as far as that goes.
And who would make that decision?
Again, based on the routing of this document through the guideline process, start with clubs, go to properties, lands on general manager, and through the governing board.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. President, I'd like to just make a comment. I would just like to have some clarity. When there is a request, and the request is to remain within a chartered club facility, it begins at a chartered club level. If a request is for a common area, it would not start at the chartered club level, it would start at the properties committee level. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yes.
So does that need to be in the policy?
It is.
Thank you.
No problem, Donna. Sue, you had something?
No, I was just going to say that is incorporated in there. Because the request may come from some individual residents who have an idea about changing the name of something, and then it would go straight to properties, and it does accommodate for that.
Anything else? By consensus, can we move this forward to establish the two changes to FA02, is it? And the elimination of FA12?
Correct.
By consensus, we'll move this for a vote.
Yes.
So ordered. I like that. Oh, 4.0, I'm sorry. The guidelines? Yes. That would be the next, that would be the step. The guidelines, I think, already have gone through committee, and it's gone through the general manager. Can we put it as a separate line item for discussion for a vote of the approval of that policy at the next one? That's sufficient for everybody? Okay, thank you. Oh, boy. General Finelli, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everybody. A subcommittee of the Budget and Finance was commissioned to assist in the development of establishing the criteria for selecting an investment advisor, professional investment advisor. I want to thank the 3 members that participated in that subcommittee, Terry Burks, Lou Mancuso, and John Hobald. They all contributed a considerable amount of time to advancing this process. Diana, could you go to the, yes, thank you. The first thing within the RFQ that you were given to review and was just up from Diana there, we want to establish the background of what the association is, description of, so to speak. Moving to the financials, what is our current investable balance, how our fees are generated through the APFs or the interest dividends, and then, of course, the prioritization per our bylaws of what the association's goals are for the advisor, with preservation of capital being priority, liquidity, and then our return on investment. Then we're going to be asking them to develop the scope, and we will be asking them to give an establishment of what they would, how they would invest those funds through a variety of portfolios, and also certain types that are in sync with the bylaws that require, or at least the policies that require a diversity. Of course, then oversight of the funds. How do they report? How do they benchmark against the industry? And what are the reporting and accounting requirements? We will be asking for, a brief description of their firm. How engaged are they with similar size or associations of our type? What approach do they have for investing the association's funds? And again, back to their qualifications and accounting interfaces so that we don't have to spend a considerable amount of time shaking out the monthly postings. The last one is kind of an aggregation of all the things I just mentioned. And we're looking forward to getting this moving forward. So.
Thank you, Pete. Couple questions. Ann, has this gone through your committee?
This has gone through my committee, and they are in consensus that we move forward with this. I want to reiterate the time and energy that has gone into this. Bill and Pete have been very involved with this because, of course, this is something that they will be utilizing. They will use the professional investment advisor. This is not something that the committee chooses. This is going to be, it's a management decision, but our committee has been helping. And Terry Burks, Lou Mancuso, and John Hobalt were very instrumental in making this happen. So I thank them for that.
Thank you, Ann. Bill, Pete, you guys are in agreement with this? I always want to say RFQ. I have to look at it because I always think it's some other letters. Whenever I see finance, I see IRS, and it scares me right away. But you're in agreement with how this is laid out on this?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Directors, comments, questions? Oh, Jim, I'm sorry, you got to wave at me. You're behind your head.
And when at previous discussions, it was brought up, and you talked about the fact that we weren't going to be billed twice through Vanguard and through this person. Is that still on the table, or where is that? Or did you throw that away, or?
It is my understanding, and I hope Pete will chime in here with this, that once we have this professional investment advisor, we will no longer, unless Vanguard is the one chosen, but we will not be paying Vanguard the fees that we have been paying them. Is that correct, Pete?
It depends. If it's continues to be a mutual fund, which we currently have, those typically do have fees associated with it. I did do an analysis of those expenses, and not saying that we're going to necessarily opt for Vanguard as any kind of mandate. This whole RFQ is going to define what we want to see out of the advisor, and that's advisement, not just always their fees. But their expense ratios are considerably lower than the industry, and I don't know if that was negotiated by the committee back in 2016 or not, but yes, if we were to retain in that, but if we moved out of mutual funds that are going for bonds and continued equities that we have with Vanguard, then it would be no, we would have, like you said, the expenses would be built into the investment as a reduction of the yield versus an overt expense that you would see paid to them.
I'm confused. I don't know how you can move the funds until you've hired the person. If you hire the person, now you're paying two people. If you didn't hire Vanguard, so you've missed me. I'm just questioning what you're saying.
We're looking, first of all, primarily out of this to fulfill the requirement of the policies and bylaws to get professional advisement. Let's just keep that as the primary reason for this RFQ. Request for qualifications is the primary reason for this subcommittee. That's all the background. We want to have professional advice to assist the investment of these funds, create the lanes, preserve the capital, all of those goals. The fees were brought up by various people, and my comment is that the current structure is that for any index or mutual fund in the current environment that we exist today, Vanguard does have a fee associated with the investment of those funds. They're actually quite low, partially because they're index funds, so they're not doing a tremendous amount of advisement within that, but the fees, the percentages that are associated with each one, and the bonds have a certain fee, the equities have a certain fee, those in comparison to other industry standards are extremely low. If we were to move away from Vanguard into any of the other investment advisors that we're considering, and I think you'll see within there that we set a pretty high bar of millions of, even maybe billions of dollars of investable management of funds. We're not going to probably see a lot of, local bank advisors, but more the big hitters like J.P. Morgan, Vanguard again, Wells Fargo, things like that, or some of the brokerage ones like Fidelity. As we get introduced to these firms away from Vanguard, then we're going to see primarily what their qualifications are, and that's the foundation for our initial reaction to what they intend to do with the firms. The fees are then going to be described by them as once we've evaluated who we consider the top selection, then the fees that they propose warrant them to continue to be the one. Bill and I did a little background on this RFQ process throughout the world or out the industry. And quite bluntly, fees are usually not even discussed in the first pass. We want to understand what their philosophy is and what their intent is to do with the funds and how they can manage the information flow to the community, to the staff, and of course, to the governing board on the quarterly basis, as that's already built into our policy. So I can't answer the fees. Our goal would be, of course, to reduce them from where we're at, but I can't absolutely guarantee that's going to happen or where they're going to show up on the income statement.
The other thing that once you start interviewing, they're going to have to read your policies and so forth.
No, we're sending that with the RFQ.
You are. Thank you.
Jim, anything else? Okay, thank you. Sharon?
Did you have a question in first? You were first. Okay. I just had a couple of questions on the second page. Well, I have it printed, so. Under the need for liquidation will never be more than 90 days. I'm assuming this is the 90%, but it doesn't, the 90%. What happened to the 10%?
No,
Is it-
that is 90 days.
Also?
We wanted to protect against inflation, and our thoughts were that the investment should remain very short-term. That's
Even
built-
on the 10%?
No, the equities, just make sure I'm hearing you right. The current methodology we invest is the 90-10, 90% bonds, 10% equities. Everybody around here knows that.
Right.
What we're discussing here is retention of the 10% equities. The 90% is being RFQ'd out for how they want to invest those. The general safe, so to speak, instruments are CDs, treasuries,
I understand that.
bonds and so forth.
I'm just asking about the comment that's here that says need for liquidation never more than 90 days applies only to the 90%.
Yes, I would say
Okay.
that's correct.
I'm asking that. Then who is managing the 10%? Is the financial advisor going to be involved in that at all?
Our goal is to ask them for the entire portfolio to be considered. The stance I would have today is unless the governing board advises me to move off that 10%, I'm not, we're going to retain that probably with the current status that we have with Vanguard. The 90% is up for the RFQ. Now, I just mentioned to Jim that the expense ratios of those bonds are very low, and it does, I don't know if a lot of you know this, but those bonds accomplish quite a bit of the diversity that we're looking for. A lot of people think they're just, either a corporate bond or a treasury, municipal bonds. These index mutual funds are spread across literally thousands and thousands of various bonds. So there's tremendous amount of diversification, and there could be a case made, just as we speak today, to retain Vanguard and apply them in the current method that we have. I would argue that the one component they don't have is any kind of ultra-safe investments like CDs or things like that. So I want to hear what their opinion is, if you will, during the RFQ selection process of what I can bring to this governing board and say, this is why we've selected them.
Okay. Jim, are you okay with that as far as the 10% goes? Are you all right with the way this is written, documents written? I'm just asking since you had so much input on it before. Okay. Is the 90% need to be identified is what I'm asking too, because I understand that the top part says 90%, but nothing in here says anything about the 10% in the scope of the RFQ. So if you're looking for that to be done by them, I'm asking how you're doing that.
I guess I'll read this, maybe I believe it answers it, but I
Is
can't
this
be
the
for
one
sure.
that says capital reserve fund? If that's the place that says how much is in the community fund. I read that part. I just didn't know if the 10% was included in that or not, or how we were describing it. I understand that part. I just didn't know if this liquidation part was only for the 90% and
Oh,
not the 10.
absolutely, yeah, but quite bluntly, stocks are
know.
They're probably the most liquid of all. You can,
Okay.
we've done that when we transitioned out to 60.
But you could keep them longer in the 10%. That's what I'm trying to get at. You don't have to liquidate them in 90 days.
No.
Okay. The other piece is, it says subsequent to management approval. Who's the management approval? Is it you or is it Bill?
Well, I think I go to what Ann was saying. Maybe you want to speak to what authority you think we're granted. I think this was an intent for us to bring our selection criteria, our adherence to the policy to the forefront, but I'll ask that question particularly of this governing board, you know, do you view it as your commission in life to say this is what we selected, or does the GM and Pete have the authority to bring it to the BNF and get it selected, or we go forward? It's totally up to you guys.
Well, my personal opinion, and I speak this as personally, and I don't think it's something that we've even addressed at BNF, but this is an operational issue. And I don't see that as something that the BNF committee should continue to follow or micromanage. We might want to periodically, you know, look at what's going on, but I see this as something that Bill and Pete would take care of. Do you agree with that, Bill?
I do, and I don't have the policy in front of me that I can relate to, but when it comes to financial policy within the association, I think it leaves that opportunity or that responsibility to the CFO, the general manager, and working in unison with the treasurer of the association.
Thank you. One question I did have, though, when you indicated that the 10% would stay with Vanguard regardless, I don't think I had understood that before. What fees are we paying Vanguard for that 10% portion?
I looked it up. Don't absolutely quote me, but it was extremely low. It was like 0.4%.
And you're thinking that even if we chose, let's just say, organization XYZ is going to be the professional investment advisor, and they are capable of investing the 90%,
Yes.
and their fees are equitable to us, we would still leave the 10%?
That's, it depends on their, so just to clarify, you know, a JP Morgan is going to be more of a commercial banking institution, classical, that you all know this. That's where we invest about 3.1 million of our reserve funds currently. They can shift us easily into CDs and money market. They, of course, can manage bonds and things like that. But when you start getting into securities like equities, my general comment is that the way I understood the subcommittee's goal, Lou and Terry and John all thought we were commissioned to say, what are we doing with that, the 90% that the board has designated to move away from just the, like I said, there is diversity within the bonds, but there was some impetus, if you will, to take that 90%, put it out to the professional advisor, ask them how they would invest those funds. For simplicity, and I would argue that the Vanguard funds have been established. We know exactly what they do. I'm not absolutely certain that I would tell you that for the low expense ratio that they have, that we would want to spend time. But if any of these other institutions present themselves and they say, we manage billions, trillions even of securities, just like index funds that are with Vanguard, then I have zero opposition to moving the whole portfolio.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Roberta?
What is our timeline for this? Are we thinking more like for next fiscal year?
No, I believe we'd like to get this approval today and get the process going. We are entering budget season, but it's a high priority of mine. I believe Bill would echo that argument. So our target would be within, in fact, it does say in there by a certain date. I left it blank pending the approval of this meeting. answer your question, I'd be shooting for maybe mid-February for the RFQ response, for them to establish their credentials. I'll look at it, and then if we believe they warrant it, we'll put them to a face-to-face or a Zoom inquiry for the exact reasons that we put out there. And then, as Bill and I communicated, we are looking for qualifications first. Once we rank them 1 to 5, we will then elicit their fee structure. And if their fees are commensurate with the quality of their selection, then we would move forward.
Folks,
I
I
would
need to
say-
jump in here for a second. Okay. First, Pete, we're not going to prove anything today. It'll be on the 21st for a vote,
Sure.
just so everybody is aware of that. The other thing is that remember how we have our 90-10 out there? It's stated that these funds cannot exceed those amounts. It's not that they're locked in. We can be anywhere in the midst thereof. And I think the RFQ that you have, there's a lot of talk about the 10%, if it's going to stay around, has nothing to do with that. And once again, I agree with Ann, and this is very much an operational issue. As far as we put the policy together, they execute the policy. Jim, I'm sorry.
How to state this, but when the Vanguard was founded, or when we hired Vanguard, this was done a lot by committee. And B&F committee had a lot to say about it, and they even had a subcommittee. And I would be a lot more comfortable if, I understand that that hiring is a staff operation. I don't argue that. But I think we're going way beyond hiring an individual. We're going into philosophy, we're going into lots of things. And I would be a lot more comfortable if B&F committee or subcommittee or whatever was involved prior to hiring.
Well, Jim, I think right now what we have to do is we have to get the RFQ in place, and then we can decide how we're going to move forward with the RFQ. Whether we have a mixed multitude of a committee, an individual committee represented by partially staff, partially governing board, partially regular everyday citizens, owner members from the community. I don't want to get the two mixed up. I think the first step is saying, is this RFQ what we want? And if that's the case, we can put it in place and then move on and say, okay, how are we going to get these people interviewed to meet the criteria? That's just my thought on it. And I agree with you. I think input from...
That isn't what I heard.
No, I don't want to confuse the two, because right now we're talking about RFQ of the idea to select somebody.
I could care less about that.
Okay. No
That's not my problem. The problem is once you get beyond that.
Well, again,
B&F needs to be involved, in my opinion.
okay, Ann?
Jim, I hear what you're saying, and I think one thing that is instrumental is this selection process includes not only the general manager, the CFO, but also the treasurer. And as the treasurer, I am the chair of the B&F committee. And I would feel more comfortable bringing in some select people either from that committee or people within the community who might want to get involved. This is not a selection by just one person or two people. However, the operation of it going forward will remain with our CFO and our general manager.
I agree with everything you said. Thank you.
Thank you. What?
George?
Okay.
George?
Wait, we want that in writing, right? Yeah. Sharon, get
Thank you, Jim.
Then I'm back to your comment about the fact that the 10% is not, it's to a level of the 10%? That it can or cannot be, that you don't have to go to 10%, in other words. I understand that, but it's not in this RFQ. Is the 10% included?
The RFQ is qualifications for the person we hire. They are not the ones who we're telling what to do. There's two different thoughts on this, okay? Our bylaws and everything state that we have 90% and 10% we are not to exceed. That's what it says,
Correct.
okay? Okay, the RFQ is telling them what are basically how many dollars we have and where they're allocated and how they would allocate it accordingly. Is that correct, Pete?
Yes.
Yeah, I like a yes. I like that one.
However, in this document, it says currently by policy, the capital reserve invests 90%. It doesn't say anything about the other 10%, is my point. Is if you don't have it all in there, how can you ask somebody then to look at the other 10%?
I'm sorry? Go ahead.
That's all I'm asking.
One thing, Sharon, that will go along with this will be copies of our financial policies, and that will be spelled out.
Okay.
So they are getting that, they're getting copies of bylaws that pertain to this. There is much more than just these pages that will go with
I
the,
saw that
with
there.
the
I just
packet.
wanted to make sure that the other 10% is included in this and that we're not leaving it out, that's all.
No, nothing's being left out.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Sue?
Well, if you look at category number 2, at the very bottom, when it's talking about financials,
Right.
the last paragraph in that section refers to that. Currently, by policy, the capital reserve fund invests 90% of its capital reserves in a combination of bond funds, CDs, money markets, which includes treasury instruments, while a maximum of 10% may be invested in equities. So it is in there.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see the other part that the 10% was listed. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Sue.
Is there any other discussion on this? Okay, hearing none by excuse me? Okay. No. Karen, not that I want any clarification is, right now, we're not at that point. We're looking for a qualification of a person who may fill this spot, and I would say it would be a contractual spot. I'm getting nods from the senior staff on that. Bill?
When you solicit an RFQ, you're going to get responses from qualified individuals and/or firms representing the financial market. I can't give you a name like Andy Maslick, who is our Vanguard representative. If Andy gets in a bus accident tomorrow and he's no longer Andy Maslick, Vanguard is going to provide us someone. So it's not the name of the individual. It is a contractual firm that we are working and trying to seek advice from.
No.
Correct.
No, okay. That's one. How about number 2? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Karen. Board, any other discussion about this? Okay, what we'd like to do is move this forward to the governing board by consensus for a vote to extend RFQ out. Consensus
Yes.
to go, yes?
Yes.
Hearing said, Karen, you know what that means. Put it on the agenda. Thank you. 4.05, Bill?
All right,
It's all about you, man.
we're going to lighten up a little bit. A little report on Proposition 207, a new law that went into effect in the state of Arizona about the legalization of marijuana and how that affects HOAs and planned communities such as ours. So, the new law amends Title 36 with the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act. The law has become effective immediately, and sales begin once the Arizona Department of Health Services starts issuing marijuana business licenses. I don't know how many the state is actually going to issue, but once those licenses are taken by individuals and retail operations open, the sale of recreational marijuana will commence. So the law allows any adult 21 years or older to use, process, transfer, and carry up to an ounce of marijuana on them. You can cultivate for your personal use, but there are limits. But it bans, this is a key point here, where it bans smoking marijuana in public places and open spaces. Common areas within our association, Beardsley Park at concerts, those types of things, not allowed. And it amends any criminal classification, Jim, if you've been picked up in the past for possession or You're off the hook. You're off the hook. So, it does address the retail sales, so it doesn't mean someone at the street corner underneath the bell tower can start selling weed. That's still illegal. There's a retail sales license that is established, and a 16% excise tax goes along with the sales of marijuana that helps support community colleges, public infrastructure, public safety, and public health programs. So it authorizes the state and local regulations of the sale of the product, and again, it's capped by a number of licenses, and I, to date, don't know how many that is. And the courts basically expunge any convictions or sentences that anyone has regarding a marijuana conviction. So where it pertains to us specifically, there are two things I think that are going to pop their heads up, and that really involves the CC&Rs and how we deal with public consumption of that kind of thing, and we anticipate nuisance complaints coming our way. And so existing CC&Rs will prevail within Sun City West. Again, there's an age limit and who can own and who can possess, but you do get the opportunity to cultivate. Now, when you cultivate or want to grow marijuana, there are some restrictions by law that do apply. One more, Diana. Keep going. Thank you. So the state of Arizona allows you, as an individual, to have 6 plants in your possession. 12 plants if your partner living under the same roof choose to get in that profession with you, but no more than 12 plants in a public reservation, residence, I should say. So cultivation needs to take place inside if you choose to do that. A greenhouse or any other thing within your residence equipped with a lock or a security device that minors cannot access. So growing it in your backyard, around your swimming pool, that type of thing, not legal. On your patio, potentially not legal. It basically cannot be seen by anyone. So if your neighbor can see it, that is a violation. So essentially in your garage, in your home, those types of things. So it needs to be in an area where plants are not visible from public view without the use of binoculars, aircraft, or other optical aids. Letters of the law. So be advised, if you care to take up a botany class here at one of our clubs, some of these plants can grow to about 20 feet high with a width of about 2 to 3 feet. Greenhouses will likely be taller than fenced properties. In Sun City West, however, again, CC&Rs would come into play, and we currently do not allow sheds or greenhouses within the community. So just because it's legal to cultivate marijuana doesn't mean that the restrictions and the policies and procedures of CC&Rs don't prevail. They do. So we do have some restrictions regarding sheds and greenhouses. Now the fun part. What's a nuisance and what's a complaint? George likes to smoke, I should say, tobacco leaves grown in Central America, wrapped in some Connecticut light tobacco, and enjoy a cocktail in his backyard. To some, that's offensive. That's a nuisance, per se. The smell of cigar smoke, the smell of cigarettes, those types of things can bother a neighbor, especially if they got breathing conditions, asthma, those types of things. So CC&Rs at times get phone calls and whatnot relative to odors, nuisances, and those types of things. What we've learned thus far, talking with the legal team that we deal with, is that the court system kind of throughout the United States tends to side with the folks that are smoking rather than the folks that are not. The courts basically say, please go inside, please shut your windows, and the smoke will go away eventually. An hour to an hour and a half, they don't feel is a claimable nuisance. So that's where we sit as far as that goes, but I do believe Riley and his team are going to receive several calls as this thing transpires and until people get educated and used to what's going on with the new law. So the evidence of harm from secondhand smoke, potential disease, that type of thing is not really, from what we've seen thus far in communicating with our attorneys, not so much of a crime relative to the nuisance claim. So you should be able to sit on your patio for up to a half hour or so, shut your windows, run a fan, clear the smoke, 4 to 6 cigarettes at night on a patio, not substantial. Those are the kind of the issuances and the sentences we're getting back from our legal representation. So, as we sit in our community inside the walls of Sun City West, we do have a large congregation of common area. Again, no smoking in common areas are allowed, and no planting of marijuana plants in common areas are allowed. So the agricultural club, if those caged areas are there, we don't want them turning into little revenue centers. But again, that is by policy and by law not allowable. It needs to be out of view, locked, children can't get near it, and that type of thing. So when it comes to what we really need here, coming up at the next governing board meeting, we'd like to be able to have our attorney draft a sentence that can fit into policy FA05 that basically just amends what we currently have on the books relative to the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act, because that has been trumped now by this new law, and a new sentence needs to go in there, basically prohibiting all of the consumption of marijuana inside our venue and common areas and those types of things. So we're getting our attorney, and again, he's dealing with hundreds of HOAs at the moment, dealing with the same kind of thing. So it's basically a sentence is needed, I think, in our policy statement to kind of just clean things up a little bit. As far as employment concerns, just because it's legal doesn't make it legal. We still enforce drug-free workplace with respect to recreational marijuana. We do drug testing for marijuana and other illegal drugs on a pre-employment basis, as well as anytime there's an on-job injury, our employees are taken down for testing. That will still continue, and if any testing is positive, employees may be terminated. So that still exists as far as our concerns go. So in summary, real quick, no consumption or cultivation on association properties allowed. We do not allow sheds or greenhouses on personal property via our CC&Rs as they exist today. And the remaining option who want to cultivate for personal use need to do it inside their own homes in a locked environment and out of the sight of other individuals. Employee practices and policies will remain in effect regarding the drug-free workplace. And that's it.
Thank you, Bill. And I see that attached to this is the addition to FA 05 of 2.4 pursuant to the ARS Title 36-2814 Arizona Medical Marijuana Act. The association elects to prohibit smoking of marijuana on association property. Is that the addition that we're talking about? Okay, so by the way, thank you for this. The other clarification I just want to make sure that the board is aware of and anybody who's listening. You mentioned the agricultural club. The agricultural club plots are whose property? Recreation center. So at that point, they would be in violation of this law if they were growing on there?
That's correct.
Okay, if there is the greenhouse that is by the Desert Garden Club, if they were cultivating plants in there, that is our property also.
That is correct.
I just want to make sure that there's a very clear clarification for anybody who wants to go out there and talk about that.
Right.
Okay, comments, questions from the board? Roberta?
I don't have any problem with us going after people on association property. But I'm a member, and my husband, of one of the largest PACs in this state, and that PAC supports private individual property rights. I'm talking about the Arizona Association of Realtors. So I'm just a little concerned going after individual homeowners on some of this stuff. I can see the sheds, we have restrictions on that, and the greenhouses, and that's been there for years. But like I said, going after people at their homes, I have a feeling, because there's a big lobby that pushed 207 also, that we would end up, I don't want us to be a court case, a trial case.
That's not our job.
No, it's not our job. And I think when it comes to that nuisance side, Bill, it wouldn't involve the recreation center because that'd be private property. That would go to Maricopa County. And I politely always say, not my circus, not my monkey. Okay, Jim?
Well, first of all, I'm very disappointed because I was ready, I own a lot over at the agriculture place and I can't grow anything, and I thought maybe I could grow this damn stuff. So I'm really disappointed. Well, anyway, the second thing.
Are you
Bill-
over it yet? Are you over it yet?
No, but I will be. Bill, you mentioned something that I question, and that is that actually sheds are legal on our property if they're attached to the house, are they not?
I believe you are correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make that point.
But greenhouses are not.
Yes, and different HOAs have different rules as well, so it's spread out all over.
Here in our town, hourly. Folks, we're going to have to put 2.4 onto it to be voted in and put into our, I'm sorry? No. No, if Bill's going to jump in there, go right ahead.
Right. I think there's some sample language in there, and we are still waiting for Mr. Hazelwood to get back with us on the preferred sentence that our legal representation wants to provide. That will be drafted and crafted and presented by the time our governing board meeting, by the date of the next governing board meeting. Yes, ma'am. It'll be edited.
Two 2.4, okay. I didn't know two. It's written, okay, I'm going to sit here and be easily confused on this one. I'll have to look it up. I'll look it up while I'm here. We have a question from Bernie Reed, and it says, how does medical pot license impact employment? We're going to refer this to Marie. Bernie, if you're listening, I'll refer this to Marie, our HR director, and you get an answer from there. Thank you. All right. Any other discussion about this? Yes, Sharon?
I just want to know about the drug testing. The drug testing itself takes about 30 days for somebody to have marijuana out of their system if they've been doing it before or using marijuana. So does the drug test itself still stand that you can't have smoked marijuana or done marijuana? I mean, I understand coming to work, but where does the drug test fall now? If it's legal? In other words, if I'm out on the property and I've done this at home, how are you going to give me a drug test and it's going to show? So what are we trying to do?
Our policy hasn't changed relative to drug testing on pre-employment or if there is an accident-related situation within our delivery of service. So whether you have the ability through American Medical Marijuana Card to have smoked marijuana or not, those are assessed by our HR team at the time of the injury. If you have, I'll leave it at
I'm
that.
not talking about an injury, I just meant in general. Are you still allowed to do this under Proposition 207? You're allowed to, so if you came and gave me a drug test, I'm going to show positive. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. Those that aren't driving vehicles and all the rest, do they have the right still to use marijuana and still work?
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, I was looking something up on this
If you want me
one.
to refer to me to HR, that's fine. I'll call and ask them then. I want to know what the policy is because someone's asked me, so I want to know what we're doing.
No problem. You call Marie directly in HR. Karen, you are correct. That is the current one that's on there. I had to look it up. Not a problem. So so right now, this is more of information for us right now. If we get the language back, we will handle it as a line item at the next governing board meeting. If we have to add any language to that based on the attorney review. And if not, then it'll move forward to the next time. We have that. All right. What's that? We have time to do that. We doesn't have to go through a workshop if it's a policy change on this one based on the attorney. We can have it all at one time. Not a problem. Okay. Any other questions about our legalization of up and smoke? Hearing none, we're moving on there. Board comments. Director comments. Don, I'm going to start with you today.
No comments.
I like
Mr.
that.
President.
Bob? No comments. Sue?
No comments.
Ann? No comments. Sharon?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't understand, my mic wasn't on. It's very important that when you come on this board, that we agree that we're going to be given truthful information. We have a director who resigned because of incorrect information. This is part of it. The first 16 pages of this report, this first 16, have this many mistakes and errors in them. That many. And the documents that go with it, excuse me. Here's a set of documents that will explain those 16 pages. I find it offensive that the general manager would sit here and then try and lie to the board, and that's what these are. If you don't want to give us misinformation and just to prove a point, I think it would behoove you to at least answer telephone calls, return the telephone calls, and/or meet with the person that you want to blindside. So in regards to these particular pieces of information that you gave, you never had the courtesy to have one meeting with me at all, ever, in the 6 months I've been here. And I've asked for it on 3 separate occasions. One of was after a meeting with Chris Barker and Russ and Kathy Chandler, sitting there, and Chris overheard the conversation where I asked you and you said you would have Kathy Peterson call me. Never had a call, never had a meeting. So the behavior that I find is completely disgusting also, though, is the fact that you chose the next 16 pages to use the study of 2013. This study of 2013 was actually done in 2011 and 2012, and the information that is in here is almost 11 years old. And in place of doing that, here is the, oh, I have a copy of it this way, sorry. Here's the executive summary that he used. I have copies of it. I've given it to all the legislators. They all know about this completely as to what's going on in Sun City and Sun City West. This particular survey specifically stated that you needed to do an intergovernmental agreement among the communities here. And that was asked for by Representative Payne, who received $65,000 from the state legislature 3.5 years ago to do an intergovernmental agreement. The Maricopa Association of Governments chose not to do that and instead decided to do a study. Here's a copy of the study. This board, these staff members, all were aware of this study. Mr. Schwinn was aware of this study. His staff has been on the committee for the past 2 years. I came and reported this in February of last year. I came again in April of last year, and I came in September of last year and explained all about the study, what it was doing. This is the final draft copy. It was been out for, I believe it's been out since August 2019, part of this has. So to tell us that we're going to use a study that gives you incorrect information, like 97% of the people don't use public transportation, the reason 97% of the people don't use public transportation is because we don't have any public transportation. So to give you facts that don't make any sense is also not okay. We threw in legal information in here. If you looked up the state laws, if you wanted to really find out about public-private partnerships, why don't you check Section 508 regarding all of the information? If I can find it, I'm assuming you can find it. It specifically states solar. It specifically states what you can and can't do. There are thousands of public-private properties in regards to having contracts and information done. So as a board member, I don't take my board job lightly. I come prepared. I don't give misinformation. I don't give incorrect information. And since Mr. Connors has left our board and resigned because of incorrect information, I'm beginning to wonder if I got all the information regarding the monies now. Jim was very adamant about what we were getting. We just get selected pieces of information? How about the marijuana report today? Does it really have all of the information in it, or just the parts that you've decided you'd want to give us? And I find it offensive. And at this particular time, you've now put these documents. I did not call the newspapers. I did not do anything with the media. The fact that there was an article in the paper a week and a half ago about the solar project, they got that from our minutes. Nobody called me. Nobody called Chris. We didn't have anything to do with the article. I didn't even know they were writing an article. So now you have in the domain, in the public domain, 35 pages of incorrect information, of incorrect, totally incorrect information. We don't have a $4 ride, just for your information. That was taken away by the county 2.5 years ago because they decided it wasn't important to support that for the seniors and the people with disabilities in our community. Had you asked me, I could have told you that. We don't have something called Ride Choice. It's not available in unincorporated areas. The only thing our seniors have is Lyft and Uber, and maybe a taxi. The only thing they pay for, if you wanted to go to dialysis appointments 3 times a week here, $8 one way, $16 3 times a week for 6 weeks. Do you really think our seniors here can afford to pay that kind of fees when we could have transit services that would be available to them that they would not have to do this on? And when you title this, even the title of the project is misleading. It says electric vehicle pilot study. It is not an electric vehicle pilot study. It has, one of the companies called Dash has agreed to donate 24 electric cars so that this community could try them. That's all they've done. It's not pushing, I'm not selling cars. I don't care whether you use them or not. And what to insinuate in here that this is for somebody to pick it up, that's not what the purpose is. Someone calls and makes an appointment and says, I need to go to the rec center. Can you take me there? One of the, someone, a driver, will come and take one of the cars and pick them up and go take them to the rec center and have a time to pick them up to take them back. If there's a shuttle that goes around the community, then that shuttle would be able for them to go from one rec center to another rec center. You totally destroyed whatever information you were giving to this board. In summing up, what I want to know is I want to know from the board president what you plan to do about it. Because now that you have incorrect information in the public domain, it needs to come down. There is no way, if the paper decides to write another newspaper article and take the minutes from that meeting and print any of this information, they would be doing a total disservice not only to the people that are in the community, but to the general public. And when you talk about selling houses, how do you want to sell houses when you have incorrect information about what can and can't happen in our community? I'm done.
Thank you, Sharon.
No, I'm sorry, but I want an answer. I want to know if you're going to contact our attorney on how to take it down. You have public domain documents, and I want them off the record.
Sharon, right
Yes.
now, you're under comments. Okay, comments are not,
Oh, I can't ask you here.
You
No
can,
problem.
you can, and I will. I will answer it at your leisure when we get through with our comments. Roberta?
No comment.
Okay. Jim? I understand. I understand that. Okay. I know you will. I know you will. Sharon, on your question, the comments and what you have there is information. Okay. We'll take it under advisement and go on from there, and let's see what it is. I don't know. I haven't seen your information either. So you want me to make a judgment? You've had your comment. You want me to make a judgment on something that I haven't seen in thin air. I'll be happy to review it and get back to you. That's what I'm going to do. Okay? The director, president comments is first off to everybody, have a happy new year and this and that. Staff, any other comments or questions?
Yes.
Yes,
Can I
Sharon.
just say, I have another comment?
Oh, absolutely. We're under comments. We'll be happy to listen to it.
I'm asking you to ask our attorney, if you don't choose to contact our attorney regarding taking down incorrect public documents, I will contact an attorney. So that's your choice.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I will take that under advisement. That's what I will do. I will contact Mr. Hazelwood directly. Thank you. That's all. That's it. There were two comments, both by Bernie, and he was answered on both of them, and to be forwarded to Human Resources. Okay. Seeing no other comments, if there's anything out, no other business pressing, we will adjourn our workshop meeting as we have. Our next workshop, our next governing board workshop will be February 5th. Our regular governing board meeting will be January 21st. Okay, both are virtual. We will not be meeting. And I will close this meeting right now. We will take a brief recess for approximately 5 minutes and then come back